Okay, so yesterday in your other classes you probably talked about it being 9/11, right? So it really works perfectly with us today. We're going to be talking about perspective and viewpoints and how we look at things. So instead of just our normal bell ringer, what I want us to do is, in just a second, I'm going to give you a picture and a little bit of a description from a different viewpoint of 9/11. So different people that were involved in the process and everything that went on, and then you're just going to write from that. But before we do that, I want to model what I want you to do, okay? So that you have an idea, so that I'm just kind of just throwing you into it. So I want you to imagine that picture. So we've got a World Trade Center worker coming out of the building after being caught up in the chaos of trying to get out of the towers after the attack. And simply to save on time, instead of writing it as we go along, I wrote it before class. So I wrote from the perspective of that worker. I had just checked my emails when I heard a loud noise. It was loud, but it didn't sound like a plane crash. I paused for a second, but got back to work. Then all of a sudden, alarms started blaring and people started screaming. We were on the 20th floor, so there was a delay in realizing a plane had crashed into the tower on the floor above us. Everyone is freaking out and trying to get out of the building, but there are too many people in the stairwell. It's impossible to see through the darkness as the power goes out and dust and smoke fill the air. Finally, we feel our way out. We feel our way out after what seems like forever. Okay, so that's just an example. There are an unlimited number of ways that you can approach that. So based on the picture, I'm just going to randomly hand you a picture from a different perspective. So read that, and then on your note card, we'll just take a minute or two and fill out that note card from the perspective of the picture that you have. And then we'll discuss that afterwards.
Seniors S through Z, or any students that missed an earlier call, the bus for seniors going to NAC will be leaving soon. All seniors may report to the bus.
Okay, so let's go ahead and just jump right into talking about this so that way we can hear from everybody and look at a lot of different perspectives. If you haven't filled out the entire note card, that's okay. But let's go ahead and get right into it. So I'm going to pop up the pictures, and then if that's your perspective, let's talk for just a second about what you might have thought about when you wrote about that. So the firefighter among the first on the scene after attacks and helped with rescue efforts in the towers. Who had that picture? That was Brady. What perspective did you write from with that?
I took the perspective of the firefighter, like he just got on scene and like, you know, it would be like an average day, except you would hear like a loud like explosion, and then you would of course like receive like multiple calls, and then you'd be hurried on scene because it was like such a devastating thing, and well, like thousands of people had died there, so you know they had just came in and they're trying to save as many people as they can.
Great perspective. Okay, let's look at a 60-year-old woman in California with no relatives or friends killed in the attack. So she didn't have anybody, it wasn't her family or friend that died, but she pays attention to the news, is an American, and knows what's going on. Who had that picture?
Me.
Roxanne, what perspective did you take with that?
I thought that she was related to it.
That's okay. So what did you write about with that?
She was part of it.
She was part of it, okay. So was she upset, or?
No, I thought she was related to him.
That's okay.
You know,
Okay. That's a different perspective. There's probably someone with that perspective. Okay, what about President Bush being informed about the attacks while reading to elementary school students? Who had that?
I did.
Hillary, what did you think about it?
I kind of thought that he is upset about it and stuff, but he's trying to have a straight face while he's reading to the little kids. But you can kind of tell by his facial expressions that something is wrong, but they might be wondering what is it, and I don't know.
Sure, so he's kind of torn between freaking out and staying calm.
Like, he seems like he doesn't know what to do. Like, should he leave or
Sure.
should he stay?
Good observation. Okay, what about a 55-year-old woman whose daughter just died in the attack? Who had that picture? Julie Nicole, what did you think about it?
I don't know, it's like, the woman her pretty daughter just died, and she's like, very devastated.
So you kind of imagined how she felt about it. So she'd be devastated. You can tell that she's crying. Good. Okay. Well, from the perspective of a businessman working in an office 2 buildings down from the World Trade Center, having to evacuate. Who had that picture? Nick, what did you think about it?
Probably from the building that they were getting evacuated by the police or whoever was there. So just in case that the Twin Towers fell wrong, different places, it wouldn't hit another building.
Okay, good. Okay, what about from the perspective of a high school student in a classroom a few blocks away from the towers collapsing, watching out the window? So that picture is a view from the window of a high school classroom. Who had that picture? What'd you think about it?
It was a student doing his work, and then he hears a jetliner flying real low, and he watches it more as it's the building explodes.
Sure. Okay, good. So the reason that we just did that, all of us just talking and then with the example, so we looked 7 different perspectives. Now there are there's millions, trillions of perspectives on that, because no one experienced 9/11 the same way. We all look at it differently. We all have different memories. You were probably really young when that happened, so your memory may not be as sharp or as vivid, but the point is, everyone looks back on that in a different way. Everyone experiences things in a different way. And not just with 9/11, with everything that we go into, everyone has a unique perspective. So we want to tie that into talking about perspective with talking about perspective in reading or literature, the way that we've been working with things. So we just finished up with a short story talking about how word choice and the tone of writing changes the way that we understand things. So now we want to look at how does the way that we read it, how do we read it based on who's telling the story, how they're telling the story. So I've used the word perspective a lot and talked about viewpoint and that kind of thing. But what does that actually mean? So I want you to look at perspective as how someone sees a situation, their feelings about a situation, their opinions of a situation. So when we're reading a story or we're reading a poem or whatever it is, we've got to consider who's telling the story, why are they telling the story, what background did they bring into the situation, because that affects all of us. Just as we experience things differently, we bring our upbringing, our parents, our values, our friends, all those things affect how we interact with something, how we understand something. And it's the same way with the things that we read. The perspective can change things. But how does it change things? With the point being, nobody has your exact perspective, right? So how does that change things? It could give us a better understanding. So if we have one specific situation and we take 7 perspectives on it, that gives us a lot better idea of what really happened. On the flip side of that, it can tell a specific side of the story. If we just hear from one viewpoint, then it may be biased. We always hear there's 2 sides to every story. We may just hear one, and that's going to influence how we read and our understanding. It may also influence readers by presenting a particular perspective. It's going to change the way that we think about things. It may connect us to a certain character. So the perspective we get may be from the main character who's reading it in first person, so telling you a very personal, direct narrative. And it also may reveal or conceal important information. Each perspective has different things. So, like with our example from 9/11, the woman in California does not have the same direct personal perspective as the firefighter climbing through the towers, right? So, here's what I want us to do. I have a handout with 3 poems. There's a short book written in like poetry verse form called Witness by Karen Hesse. And basically it's set in Vermont and it deals with the Ku Klux Klan. So what you're going to read is 3 different perspectives on one incident. So a cross burning in Vermont, dealing with the Ku Klux Klan, and get 3 different perspectives. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to hand that out, and then I want you to read it individually. So we'll just take a couple minutes and you'll read it, and then we're going to get with our partners and discuss it. And on the back side of that, we have a handout with some questions that are going to guide your thinking. And then at the end, we're going to come back together and talk about what we think that means. Okay? And as you're reading, I'll come by and pick up your bell ring. I'll go ahead and take up your bell ring. And when you finish reading, if you'll just look up, and then we'll get in our groups and okay, so if everybody's finished, then what we'll do on the back side, on the last page of that, there's a few questions to guide your discussion in your group, okay? So, before we split up, we'll split up into groups of two. I just want to make sure that we understand how that's broken down. So there's questions about Johnny Reeves. So that first poem is from the perspective of Johnny Reeves. The second question about Leonora Sutter, so from the perspective of Leonora Sutter. And the third one being about Raynard Alexander. So those poems that have their name on the top of them are from their perspective. So just to clarify that. And then we'll get in our groups and we will answer that discussion guide, go through that discussion guide together, and then we'll come back together and see what we can come up with, okay? If you've got questions throughout that, I'll be walking around and checking. So get in your groups of two and give yourself some space. There you go. So what tells you that he's in the Ku Klux Klan? Who you say that he's in it? Good. Good. So what do you think about John Reeves? He's happy about it. So what tells us that he's happy about it?
It says, on the last part, crucifix, sword in the knife, and
Good. So that makes you think about like the meaning of that since it's calling, it's not just like shepherd, it's calling. Conservation, I like that. What do we think about Henry North Sutter? That's scary. How does she feel about the crossword?
on the last one, on the third one,
What makes you say that? I think the color, why do you think that?
already come on the last one,
That's the best. Okay. I see. So would a light will have a crossbow? Probably not, right? So I think that's why I think you're right. That's a good observation.
this one because they did that.
Okay, so he probably thinks they said only a lunatic would do, and then he even mentions or the working children. So either a lunatic or a child. So what does that say that he thinks about the Ku Klux Klan people?
That he don't like them.
He thinks they're good. He thinks they're crazy. Good. So point that out and explain that evidence. That's a good job.
Like,
Or about crazy, or
So what do we think about Leonora Sutter?
That she was scared.
She was scared, and because she would
She had a closet, and then
You're right.
that she opened a hole for herself, and then
Are you serious?
No matter how she turns the light
Yeah,
across or
yeah.
like curls,
That's what it
it's bright claws.
Their claw,
Yeah.
instead of just like shining through claws through, good.
How does the crossword make him feel? Mad because he's saying that they're only able to make you do that older child.
No.
Oh, no. Like,
He's mad.
yeah. I think he's mad because they're burning the cross.
Good, what tells you that he's mad?
Alright,
He is.
which of the three accounts
So why do you think he's mad?
is the most personal?
He cares for the
He says that.
because
Is the least personal, just financial?
yep.
That one,
So these,
the last two is personal,
Yeah.
it's the second one's the most.
Good.
Because that he's doing it in a,
He knows.
Wait, the second one?
Here you go.
Whatever.
Is the second, is she, 3 and old, is she black?
What do you think?
Yeah, I guess.
Why do you
Because
think
they wanna set, a cross burning on a white
He thinks
person's
it's their
property.
racist
okay.
and-
What does she do in home?
She hides in her mom's closet.
And the black person behind the cross,
Right?
the cross burning?
No.
Probably not, right? So she's had experience with that.
It's
From her
either
perspective,
black,
she has been, that's been around.
it's either black or she's Hispanic.
I would say probably. I think you're right with that.
Wait, so the first one is the second?
The second one's the most personal. The first one is not at all. It's like the least.
How does Lily-
No, it's like, wait, what? Oh, you're putting the least personal?
What is the first one is the most personal?
I mean, the second one.
What do they mean by personal?
Personal, so which one is more intimate and personal, like personal details, like it's more real to them, it's more, so something's personal to you, like it's private and it really means more to you. It doesn't affect someone as much if it's not personal. That makes sense? So which one is
Most personal.
affected the most by it?
Fall in love, girl.
Yeah, so it's kind of on the personal, because if she's a black young girl, she's had experience with stuff like that. Like she's been hated on her entire life.
Ignored.
So it's very personal and private and meaningful.
Do the KKK still do this?
I wouldn't think so. I mean,
Not
I think
as
it's still
Dude,
young.
I saw a KKK thing. Hold on.
So are we finished with,
No, I'm still having to find the least one,
which one do we think is the
the
least one?
first one.
The first one, how come?
Because he's happy in it. He's not like on this one where he's mad, or this one where she's scared. He's happy.
He's not, he
Because
doesn't focus on it.
he's probably helping them burn the cross.
Okay.
She's the most.
I'd be ready to comment on that, because that's a good perspective to have.
So, and she's scared, so,
Okay.
What are the author's purpose?
Hold on.
Oh.
As long as we purpose.
So which one do we decide on?
Three different
Is the least
characters.
personal?
described in this.
How come?
He's the one doing it, and ain't gonna let it down.
So he's the one that's affecting that?
It's probably gonna
Fair enough.
And these three poems, from the author, is he trying to do from three different points? Like, there's one is doing the burning, one is getting the burning done to her, and the other one is witnessing the burning.
I could have said that better myself. No, it's perfect. Be ready to say that. That's good. Good. So what do we decide? Which was the most personal?
The lady is most personal because, well, if she hid from the phone, then that would probably reference she was so then that would be pretty much then the least personal would probably be this one because he is the whole, if Johnny Reeves is part of, you can't get the excuse, he could be like,
You sure?
part of it, he's gonna be,
Reveal that?
he's gonna take that for himself, well,
Yeah.
you know, he's gonna be like, Christians or like that, yeah, well, yeah, he's like that, the KKK, so the, and Bernard is probably like the least because he was,
What was that?
I guess he's, from what I know,
It's
he
the
didn't really
first
care,
one is about him
except for
burning the
the
cross,
dry conditions.
and the second one is
Yeah.
how
Good. You ready?
the cross
That's a
getting
really good
burned
Okay.
in front of a little girl, and the third one is about him with the.
So when we decide on what we think the author's purpose was,
To show their point, everyone of their point.
to show different perspectives, how does that influence our reading?
It makes us choose a different side of what we might go on.
Kind of makes me wonder, like, what it would have been like for white people to be, like, for the black or the white people to be racist over the white people.
So does it feel like since you get three different that it's more like you're there and kind of like
And
have a better image of what's
I was
going
showing
on?
both sides of the story, so you can just keep on.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, so we'll just take about another 30 seconds to kind of wrap things up, and then we'll come all back together, and we'll talk about what we talked about in our small groups. Okay, great. So it looks like everybody's finished. So now let's just all come back together in your groups, and as I kind of talked with you, we kind of got a good sense of what was going on. But let's kind of go a little more in detail with that. So that first question, it says, what can you infer about Johnny Reeves from the poem? What did we decide in our groups? What were some of the ideas we had about Johnny Reeves?
That he's a part of the KKK, he's happy that he's doing that, and it makes him feel probably good.
Okay, somebody tell me why it was kind of a consensus that we all thought that he was happy and he's in the KKK. Why?
He put perfect whenever he put the crucifix on fire, and he was the one that lit it, as he said.
Okay, good. Hillary.
Yeah, it isn't stated in here, but maybe because he thinks that he's doing a good deed
Okay,
or something.
okay. Kyle, were you gonna say something?
How did they even get him to write this?
Well, from his perspective. This is an author writing this from his perspective. So not necessarily that he wrote this word for word, but the author, Karen Hesse, wrote from these perspectives, just to give us an idea of
What's inside?
what that mindset would be like. Okay? So, we answered the second part of that question, how does the burning cross make him feel? Now I have a question though. When I tell you his occupation, his job, tell me how that affects your reading of it. If I tell you that he was the town's preacher, how does that change your reading of that?
Kind of like, if he's a preacher, then why is he doing this? I mean, we're all the same, just different colors.
Yeah.
he was a preacher, he's Christian, he's not racist. And a Christian will not be racist towards
Okay.
any race. Like, no, like, relevance, but like, what are you? You're like,
I'm like,
yeah, see, all the way is we're not being racist.
Okay.
And everyone has some kind of culture in them. Like, I'm
Sure.
Indian, like Cherokee Indian, so
Exactly.
would you want to be like racist over me?
Okay.
And we all have Indian in us, or
Exactly.
Guatemalan or something.
That's a really good point. So we're saying that we all kind of agree that we're all the same. Like we're not that. But with this guy, it messes with our mindset of what a preacher is, because preachers aren't supposed to be the people that are burning crosses and hating people, right?
No,
So, that's really good points. Now, just to make sure that we cover, I would like to talk more about that, but just to make sure that we cover everything. What about Leonora Sutter? What did you get from that, Roxanne? Tell us about Leonora Sutter.
oh, she was scared.
She was scared?
Yeah.
Okay. What tells us that she was scared?
She went to her mom's closet.
She went to her mom's closet?
Yeah.
Good. What else? Julico, what else do you have to add about Leonora Sutter?
I don't know, something,
Okay.
she was scared.
She was scared. What tells us that she's scared, though? Being in the closet, is there anything else that tells us? Anybody can add to this.
The walls like that under the door.
So the light,
Couldn't hide anywhere.
good, so the light kind of crawls underneath. Good, so that word changes the way that we, go ahead, Brady.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be racist or anything, but because she hid, and because there was a cross on the hill, then that would probably infer that she's black.
Good, okay, so we can tell that she's black because, why would that tell us that she's probably black?
Because, well, the KKK are pretty much against black people.
Okay.
And just back then, that's how they were.
So a white person may not be scared of a cross burn like it wouldn't be.
No, it's like a white guy can walk around, but if you see a black guy, you're gonna kick it. Oh. It's,
Okay.
it's weird.
So, we touched on how does the burning cross make her feel, and Roxanne said that she was scared and it kind of traumatized her, right? Okay, and I think that you're right, in the story she is a young African-American girl. So, good observations with that. Now, what about Raynard Alexander? What do we get from him?
He's witnessing either a lunatic or a little kid lighting a cross on fire, which it could easily spread, as he said in the poem.
Okay, good. So he's witnessing. Somebody tell me, how does he feel about burning the cross? Go ahead, Julie Nicole.
The only thing he really cared about was the dry conditions.
Because of the dry conditions. So he's like, talk more about that. What do you think that means, that all he's concerned about is the dry conditions?
He cares about his town more than what they're doing to the cross or whatever.
Okay,
And he doesn't want to try to bring down.
good observation. I like that. Did anybody else notice that that was his major concern, was like the burn ban, like the dry conditions? He didn't want to, he wasn't really as concerned with racism or anything. Good, go.
He might be the mayor or something.
Okay.
Well,
So-
he says in the poem that racist rubbish,
Okay.
which will not fade away.
So what does that tell us about his deep down beliefs about the issue?
You don't care for racism.
So he's against racism. So he's for equality and everyone being treated the same, right? Okay. So
black or white.
so he could be either. That's true. It doesn't necessarily tell
It
us.
doesn't even have to be African American though. He could be like
Mexican.
Japanese or.
Sure. So he could be anything. Okay. Now what changes when I tell you that his occupation is he is a newspaper journalist?
That's probably going to be on the front of the newspaper.
So he's probably going to talk about it.
He probably sees that in, like, in different towns, like the ones that he visits, as well, during his traffic and stuff like that, in newspaper.
So does that explain his attitude towards in focusing on the dry conditions instead of, so it's just something?
He's probably used to it. Like, if he goes to towns and he sees that they're burning crosses, he's probably used to it.
Okay.
Seeing it, maybe.
Do we see that in his section of the poem? Is it kind of like this is just an everyday deal, or is it something important?
He's just like,
He ignores
Just
the
ignores it?
cross, but it's the dry condition.
Okay, so he's worried about the dry, and he knows that they're in a burn ban and knows about the dry conditions. Okay, so which of those, and then we did have some different ideas about this one. Which of the three accounts is the most personal? Let's start with, we'll go with this group right here. What did you think was the most personal?
The little girl,
Okay.
because she was scared, and she wouldn't have been scared if she was probably white,
Okay.
but she was.
So we think it's most personal because it really scared her and messed with her emotions right there.
Yeah, and that, I think being able to see all that and seeing a cross being burned can bring, like, whenever you're older, it can bring back memories or you have nightmares from it.
Okay. Kyle, do you have anything to add to that? Okay, good.
Yeah.
This group, also, what did you think? Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, we just thought that was the most personal, but the least most was the first one.
Okay, hang on to that thought, because we're gonna come right back to it. Now, you guys had a different perspective on which one was the most personal. What did you think was the most personal one?
We thought the most personal one was the lady, because,
Yeah. Okay.
well, because it's, well, if she was black, she probably was,
Mhm.
then that would be a threat towards, well, black people instead of, white people, and, well, yeah, just.
Okay, that's helpful. I was thinking of the one that is the least personal. We had different perspectives on that. So we all agreed that the most personal one was for the little girl, because she was scared and traumatized her, and it really affected her, right? Okay, so which one did we think was the least personal? Let's start over on this side now.
We thought the first one was because he's burning the cross.
Okay.
Nothing personal, well, it's kind of personal. I mean, like, he doesn't mention it in the story.
He's not scared and messed. Go ahead, Ross. So what was that?
He's not sad, he's happy.
He's not sad about it. Okay, good. Okay. Now you guys thought that that first one was the least personal too, right? Okay. Why did you think that?
It ain't gonna affect him like it's gonna affect the little girl or anything. He's just gonna be happy about it. It's gonna
He's
probably
not-
gonna be traumatized for a while, so.
Okay.
He's not getting affected by any of it. He's just doing what he wants to do, and if anyone like tells him like should do it, he's not gonna listen. He's still gonna do it anyway.
Okay. Now what did y'all think? The least personal perspective.
We thought the Rainer guy.
So the third one from the journalist guy. Why was that the least personal?
He's the only thing he cared about was the dry conditions.
Okay.
He didn't know how much thought into that.
Okay. So he wasn't directly involved in it. So
He said racist rubbish.
okay. So he had his
Made it
opinion.
kinda mad.
Okay. I see, and there's no right or wrong answer. That's okay. We've been able to justify. Go ahead, Brandon.
With the first guy, technically it is kind of personal towards him, because if he feels happy while burning the cross, then he's gonna be feeling like he is a big part of the KKK. And like, that would be like religion towards him, and like religion is a big thing towards people.
Sure.
And, it's just like every day. Yeah, like, just, he felt like he was important. He probably was important because he was the one that set fire to the cross. But, like, yeah, so I think that one would be like a tie between the most important, between the lady and him.